It does have the bosses. Okay, great. I found it. Needs Swamp Ass. Okay. Swamp Ass tier. All right, so let's start from the jump. Vigilant Guardian. Are we doing this? Okay, so let's be clear. So when I normally do these tier lists, I rate the bosses for where they are in the raid. For example, rating Vigilant Guardian against, like, Halondrus makes no fucking sense. Halondrus is supposed to be a thing, and Vigilant Guardian are supposed to be a thing, and those two things are different. So you have to rate Vigilant Guardian among where it should stand against other first bosses, and then basically the same for everyone else in the raid. There is going to be a little bit of weirdness in this because of that, and that's because basically they treated every boss after Halondrus as almost an end boss, except for like one, or very close to that. And that's never happened before. But, you know, we'll rank those bosses accordingly. So Vigilant Guardian on Heroic and Normal is among the worst bosses they've ever made, because you just sit around forever waiting and it's boring as fuck. On Mythic, it's a bit more interactive. It gains points for you doing more damage means you stop the fight faster. If you get to 40% before the third shield, the second shield, the first shield, the boss no longer exposes its core, and you just fight it until it's 15% and then it's over. I like that a lot. Its watchability, it's like a pretty normal boss to watch. One bad thing is the mechanics are not even throughout the whole fight. Basically, you like sit in the absorb shield, and then all the mechanics come out at once, and then you just get fucking blasted to oblivion. I think it's a pretty good first boss. Like, I'm just trying to think of, like, banger first bosses in the history of WoW. Like, just entry tier bosses. Jinrock was probably the best one in Throne of Thunder. A lot of them, people like them just because they're fast and easy. Talik, yeah, Talik was good. I mean, we don't need to think this long. It's Vigilant Guardian. It was okay. It was not a top tier first boss. It honestly wasn't Swamp Ass. Normal and Heroic, Vigilant Guardian, Swamp Ass guaranteed. B, it's average. You could probably say it's C. I don't know. Like, it's just something like this. Yeah, just say C. That's fine. You guys, a lot more of you guys are saying C than B. All right. The next boss, should we do this by wing or should we do this by position they were killed world first? Let's do position they were killed world first. Second is Skolex. Skolex is like a very clearly designed second boss, and you guys might say, Will, Max, DeSausage, Zymox, and Skolex are all like the potential second boss. That's not really true. That hasn't been true in the past either. Castle Nathri had the same thing, where you could pick Huntsman, Sun King, or Zymox, and there was a clear... Huntsman was the clear second boss. It was clearly the most mechanically easy boss. Skolex is that of the first three, no question. I kind of fuck with Skolex, though. Like, I mean, it's at least a B. I mean, it's just like a pure single target, easy as fuck boss. I don't know. You could argue that it would be lower because it's boring. Sure. The boss goes, like, underground, so you lose a little uptime, and it's not equal between melee and ranged in that sense. It's definitely not A. There's no shot it's A. It's a B. It's a B. It's like a lower B, too. But it's like, it's a fine boss, right? Okay, next boss that was killed, Artificer Zymox. At least an A, close to an S. I think the Zymox concept of them bringing him back, him in his previous raid, and him now, I feel like this boss, for what an early boss in a raid should be, is fucking fantastic. I love it. Some things didn't work properly on the fight. That's fine. I'm a huge fan. I don't need to talk too much more about it. Maybe, if anything, it should do more mechanics at the end of the fight, because, like, you kind of just do the, like, 2 double rings, and then it's just over. Like, he actually just doesn't do anything. Zymox is now cringe because of stopping DPS. Yeah, Zymox is one of the few bosses in this raid that they clearly made way less bosses in this raid make you stop DPS, right? So, like, basically from Halondrus onward, you never stop DPS. That's not an accident. That is a direct overcorrection from... Not even an overcorrection. Just a correction from what happened in Sanctum, basically. But a few early bosses did still have it. I don't think that matters, though. You can kind of just... I mean, as long as you lust as soon as P3 starts, you don't have to stop in P1 and P2, so you just kind of go, you know? If you make the argument for S, I would not, like, defend it hard, but I'm going to put it A. I think you could make the argument that this is an S-tier early boss. Okay, so after Zymox was DeSausage. I think it's really good. I think it's an A or a B. It has no problems with it. They designed 4 rings for no reason, because, like, you don't even make it that far into the fight. Even with, like, bad gear, you kill it well before that. I really liked this fight after testing. I'm a little annoyed with it because we wiped us and I think other guilds like wiped to this boss more in farm randomly than others. We actually had a strat, and I believe Echo ended up using this strat. We had a strat from testing where we would just use Venthyr with 2 charges, and we would make the boss channeling last long enough to where this was up every single ring of the fight, and you would just always Venthyr 2 rings at a time. But we noticed that this reduced your ad damage by a shitload, and that the mechanic wasn't actually hard enough to warrant you to do that. And I think Venthyr porting it actually felt cooler, but we didn't end up doing that. I don't know. I'm gonna leave this up to chat. I'm torn between A and B. I'm just gonna... Which one do you guys think it is, A or B? Okay, wait. Okay, there's way more Bs. What the fuck? Okay, it'll... I mean, maybe it could come back, but that's a strong B. Okay, B, moving on. That's also where I have it. Prototype Pantheon. This boss sucks cock. I mean, it's... I don't even know. Okay, maybe it's a C. Maybe it's a C because it just feels... It feels like swamp ass because it's just mechanic vomit. Like, nothing really ties together. It's just like honestly, the design for this boss is horrific. And the only thing I'm thinking is maybe it's not as bad as it seems, but it's because every other boss in this raid was so good that it just makes this seem so much worse. I think it's swamp ass. I think it's like one of the worst fights they've made in a while. And it just seems so much worse because they didn't really make any other bad mid-tier bosses this raid. So Lihuvim, the problem with Lihuvim was it's very clearly Kingaroth. Kingaroth was just much better. I never really understood why they made the ads have more or the same health like after they were out of their phase, because it made you only kill 1 and just deal with things, which means you didn't even have to like optimize damage to kill 2 at a time. Funny enough, we ended up doing that, but it wasn't how they wanted the fight to be killed initially. You kind of tell, I guess, by those health value things. They wanted you to just kill 1. It wasn't really cool. Like, we probably had more fun on this fight because we actually had to like try out different options and figure out the Mythic mechanic that wasn't tested, and we had to, you know, we like shifted things around and like tried leaving certain things alive, so we at least got the full like Lihuvim experience. But even then, man, I mean, it just, the room's also just actually too big. Yeah, this is definitely a case where it's a fun fight for the first guild to do and not for anyone else. It's just, actually a perfect example of that kind of fight. I think it's a hard... You guys think it's a hard C? Yeah, it's a hard C. Hard C. All right, moving on. After Lihuvim comes Halondrus. This is one of the best fights they've ever made. No doubt. It might be the singular best mid-tier boss they've ever made. It's one of the best overall bosses they've ever made. The meme value it created was huge. It was that coveted mid-raid wall that ever since Gorefiend, people are like they really like it. I don't really know what else there is to say. It's also maybe the most watchable boss that's ever been in the Raced World First. I don't know if that's what you should base your rankings off of, but it's certainly something that matters, right? Super easy to understand, just ridiculous execution. Killing that boss World First felt really fucking good. Killing this boss and Anduin were so weirdly anticlimactic because at that point, a normal Raced World First is over, and the amount of pulls we took on the bosses leading up to it are normal for like most Raced World First and time. Not the pulls, but the time. So like you're killing an insanely hard boss at that point, and it's usually like, oh, we win. But then there's just like fucking 4 more bosses left. So it was very anticlimactic with both of them. But especially the way that Anduin died, even though it wasn't nearly as hard, was it was just super epic. But yeah, Halondrus, no question, absolute turbo banger. Anduin. Oh man. I feel like this boss was a shoo-in for S in the first week before the stars bugged. But like that definitely happened, and it took a lot away from the fight. I feel like it cannot be S because of that. I feel like it also died with like 2 people staying alive for a long time, which is like really epic, yes, but that's also lame. Like a boss should not die world first like that. Even though it was cool, like that just means something's wrong with the way they made the phase. This doesn't quite matter because I'm kind of looking at it for world first kill, but now you do so much damage that you don't even do the last phase regardless of the stars being fixed. So that kind of takes a little away from it. I think Anduin is an A tier boss. It would be S tier if the last phase worked properly, but also I think Anduin might be the best example, and I'm not super into this, but the lore involved with Anduin and how it played out on the fight and how the phases interacted with each other, I think is... I mean, that's just top tier as fuck. Like, you literally fight the fucking Lich King in an intermission. That's very Lich King-y. Like, I mean, it just looks fucking cool. Like, it's just really fucking cool. Lords of Dread. So Lords of Dread is interesting. I think like as of if okay, so where are we judging Lords of Dread? Are we judging it for like an near end tier boss? Like are the other bosses you're judging this against? Is it Zakul? Is it Manaroth? Is it Mithrax? Like what are you actually, is it a penultimate boss? Because it technically could be the second to last boss, or are you judging it just below that? I think the biggest thing that stains Lords of Dread is the fact that it didn't just do double damage during the swarms from the start. Why did they randomly pick certain abilities from certain classes but not others to do more damage? That's like such a strange design decision that still kind of lingers when you think about this boss, even though it's now been nerfed and changed. The fact that you ran like so little ranged, including actually sitting a raid buff because of the way that was designed, is definitely fucking weird. But the way the fight played out was pretty cool. It was actually like a very real healer check, and those don't really happen very often. Like I think once you got in the flow of it, it was more like repeatable and you just kind of assigned enough to each thing. But I don't know. It's harder for me to argue that this is any higher than a B, but I think it's better than like DeSausage and Skolex for where they are in the raid. I don't think it's swamp ass, and I don't think it's C. I think it was like pretty good, especially if you consider the fact that this boss wasn't tested. I think it actually was okay. Also, the Among Us phase was cool. I guess I haven't talked about that. Of all mechanics that they've ever put in this game, I think that one might be at the very top of the list of things that could have gone horribly wrong. Like the amount of bugs that could have happened with that mechanic. They probably tested the fucking shit out of it, but like people randomly dying. Like honestly, like I'm kind of amazed that mechanic came out bug-free, really. The pieces weak aura, you think it's a downside that Blizzard allowed that mechanic to be solvable by a weak aura? First of all, I think that's really impressive that pieces made that. But I also don't think it's that impactful. Both doing it with the like weak aura that Echo and us used, where you actually like vote, I guess, with a macro, and then it just puts it on your screen. That's basically doing it just without voice. That's slightly more efficient. That's probably 1 to 2 seconds off of doing it vocally. And then the pieces weak aura just did it like 2 seconds faster than that. The boss could have been killed doing any of them. So it wasn't like turbo impactful. I'm not sure, man. B's good. Does anyone have like a major argument? I really doubt anyone has an argument that it's better than B. It's more like, I feel like some people think this fight is turbo ass. So I think it's B though. All right, Rygalon, easy S tier. The best second to last boss in forever. Maybe like the best second, because like it's basically like they put Sludge Fist as the second to last boss, and they've never really done that before. That technically happened in High Mall because people ended up killing Butcher because it was not linear. People ended up killing Butcher before Imperator, or in Paragon's case, they actually killed Imperator before Butcher, which is funny. That was the last time a like very simple mechanically boss was put in that position, put on that pedestal in the raid. And I think it was like basically perfect. The fact that it was killed 4 healed and 5 healed by the only 2 guilds to kill it in that lockout, I think is really impressive that it gave you that variability. It was a really fun fight to progress on. It was just, just your run-of-the-mill, crazy high throughput requirement, DPS and healing-wise, and just enough mechanics to wipe you, but not like... I mean, it was definitely more challenging mechanically than Sludge Fist, and it also had a way tighter check than Sludge Fist. Like, Sludge Fist, I feel like a lot of people remember it for being tuned extremely well, and it was for its spot in the raid. But we also killed Sludge Fist the very first time that we got to the last part of the fight with everyone alive. Like, literally the first time. Not like you had to optimize. The first time. I think it gets a little bit of a stain because it is, like, completely unacceptable from a fight design thing, and they did end up fixing this, obviously, to have a variable in rage on a timer that's, like, clearly not supposed to have that. Like, a 7-second variance in what a boss's in rage can actually be. Obviously, we will hate that more than others because with the way we decided to kill the boss, we ended up wasting 4 hours. If that did not exist, we would have killed it 4 hours earlier. So obviously for me, it stings more, but also I think that's like a clear stain. Like that is a ridiculous thing to happen. But even then, I mean, it's still a fucking insane boss. Insane boss. All right. Jailer. It's definitely not S, but it's definitely not any lower than A. Let me try to think through it. Jailer had like... So Jailer, when we got to it, was tuned for us to kill it basically with what we had, at least in that next lockout. Each phase, you kind of fundamentally went through it. There was very minimal bugs. They were fixed pretty quickly. Well, except for obviously the ones at the end. But that didn't affect the world first kill, so that didn't really matter. Except for the one... Basically, every guild that killed it was pretty routinely skipping the set of chains right before the last phase. But you could do it with that. It just like made it more consistent to skip them. I don't think it's S. I also think, like we mentioned, like viewer watchability for all of these bosses, not as a main point, but as a side point. I think Jailer might have been the most unwatchable end boss of all time. Before the boss was ready to be killed, viewer counts were at like an all-time low throughout that entire week, probably due to fatigue with the Race to World First in general because it had been that long. But bro, you could even be playing WoW currently and be watching that boss and have no fucking clue what's going on until it was like dying, basically. That being said, it was actually a really fun boss to progress on and like come up with your own strats. Like I basically did that all the way until the end of P3, where we were both like kind of going different directions. That works. Our P2 and P3 was different. Theirs was definitely better. But like you could kind of do the boss a few different ways. I think the idea of like draining Azeroth's health and healing it up again, and the different ways and timings you could do that, which our P1 was different. Each one of our P1s was different. I think it was good. I just don't think it captures what most end bosses capture to me. But I don't know if you guys feel that way. Like I feel like Jailer as an end boss, like S tier end bosses, there's only been like legit like 5 or 6 of them. It's like Blackhand, Lei Shen, Garrosh. Honestly, you could argue Sire Denathrius. Not in like super old shit. Not like the like Yogg Zero Light and stuff like that. But like Rag from Firelands, like that, like Jailer is definitely not on that tier. But it's possible you could be an S tier boss and not be on the all-time boss list. But these two are. These two are all-time potentially best in their position, right? I think it's A. I don't think I'd put it S. It's probably better than Anduin though, for what it was supposed to be. Cool secret phase? It does have a cool secret phase, although flawed. Yeah, but it does have a cool secret phase. How would you rate its secret phase compared to other bosses that had secret phases? Like N'Zoth's secret phase was fucking pitiful. That was like the most recent one, I guess. Gul'dan was way better, yeah. I guess there just haven't been that many. The Sylvanas 5% pass was a secret. Yeah. Argus? Oh yeah, Argus was better. Yeah, so it's basically above N'Zoth and below the other ones. Way below Firelands Rag. You think in a worse raid, Jailer would be higher? It's just hard to rank him after having Halondrus and Rygalon? Yeah, I mean, I guess this is all relative. Like, Jailer is the best boss out of all of these that isn't these two, but these two are, like, clearly better, right? For what they're supposed to be. I'm happy with this list. I think I'm happy with this list. I'd be interested to see how, like, the community feels about this. After the people who get cutting edge. I wonder how people will view bosses like Anduin, Jailer, Halondrus, and Rygalon after nerfs and stuff. I wonder how much of that actually holds up. But to tie this up, where does Sepulcher rank as raids compared to other raids? I don't think I'm going to give an answer to that, because I think no matter who you are, you have to give yourself so much time. Ranking entire raids relative to other raids in the past is recency bias fucks you both in good and bad ways. People will have overrated raids because they've just happened, and they've also severely underrated raids. Like Nathria is probably the most recent example of that. Like people look way higher on Nathria now in hindsight than they did at the time, because there's just always a ton of negativity in WoW at the time. This would be the opposite. I think this is one of the best raids ever, but I'm probably going to give myself like another year to like think about that, because I feel like I could be overrating it because we just did it, right? Very, very fucking good though. Very good. I think like the boss, like even outside of the difficulty, like the boss design was just top tier as fuck, right? Like how many raids have that good of boss design, you know? Like it's very rare. Like that it might be the most well-designed raid ever.